Good morning and welcome to our packed Technology Executive Roundtable, our final session of 2020. The theme is the evolution of globalization, and we've got a great lineup here for you this morning. If you haven't used this platform before, it's very user-friendly. I first want to, before I get into some of the details of the program, just call out our sponsors. We're very grateful and thankful for so many great enterprise technology companies that support this gathering. And it's gatherings like this, and it's certainly a lot of the one-on-one interactions that happen among our community. So I want to call out Amatech, Boomi, Signity Technologies, Comcast Business, RSM, SAP, Slalom Consulting, SEI, and Vanguard for their support of PACT and specifically for their support of the Technology Executive Roundtable. This remote platform provides an opportunity not just for you to hear from some terrific experts here this morning, but also to network. And so on the back end of this program, we're going to have some networking time, and we look forward to presenting this to you. Attendees, again, are muted. You're on mute with no video, but you can use the Q&A window, which you see on your screen, you will see on your screen, to ask questions. We'll monitor those questions throughout, make sure that the panel reaches out and connects with them. And you can also chat with other attendees. So feel free to message individuals in that. The program will go to 9:35, and then we'll go back to the tables in our rooms for informal networking. Again, you can double click on a table to join a table or to move among tables. Just remember as you're doing so to have your camera on and your mic on. So with that, let me introduce our moderator. So Dave Mathias is the founder of Beyond the Data. And interestingly, and this is one of the beauties and benefits of COVID, Dave is coming to us live from Minnesota, where he is based. But let me give you a little history. Dave actually grew up part of his life in Philadelphia, in Valley Forge, actually. My guess is that he got his interest in starting technology from his dad, who was an executive at Commodore Computers. My guess is there are a few people on the phone that had an early Commodore computer. But Dave came to us via Bentley Systems and Jeff Richardson, another panelist who he knows well. And we're really excited to have Dave here again, talking about the evolution of globalization. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Dean, and great to be here virtually. Earlier this year, I was doing one of these actually in Russia. So like I say, you can travel all over. Now, of course, the benefit here, I get to poke a little bit because I'm in Minnesota now, where we usually have to complain about snow, but it sounds like the snow might be coming your way. But we've already had 3 doses of it, so it's time for it to go out east. But great to be here today, and yeah, the good old VIC-20 and Commodore 64s, all those good things at Commodore computers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the great panelists that we have today. And so first of all, we have Jared Blitzstein, who's the Director of Software Engineering at Boomi. And Jared's going to give a little bit more interesting things about him, including when's his next haircut going to be, right, Jared? You said you're going to do a year without a haircut, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in March, when we all kind of headed home, I decided then I'm just not going to get a haircut until this is over. And as we all know, we're not even close. So I'm just going to grow my hair and see where we land. Maybe in March. That's we'll take a look and see where I end up. But a little background on myself. I've spent probably the last 2 decades on the same mission, and that's providing technology-centric solutions for businesses and organizations. And I actually had that on my resume for a while, and it's rung true my entire career. So I'm really happy to be kind of part of the same mission that I started with. The last decade or so, I focused primarily on architecture and the enterprise needs, specifically modernization and people, talent, and culture. I'm a big believer that people, culture, and talent are really what's going to drive innovation forward, not necessarily the technology, but the people that, drive that technology. My organization, I'm part of Dell Boomi. We're out of Chesterbrook, and we're an integration platform as a service organization. We actually invented that space. So we were the very first to market for that concept. There's a Gartner Magic Quadrant around this now, and we are a 7 consecutive year leader in that space. We were acquired by Dell about 10 years ago. So we have the benefits of being that startup, who we are with our DNA, and backed by Dell, which is a massive vendor in our space. We enable end-to-end delivery of basically whatever your business needs, whether it's low code, API management, data integration. We could really help digital transformations and just run businesses. One of the things I was also asked to expand on is, one of my challenges personally with kind of COVID and what we're dealing with this year. And for me, it's what I call interruption-driven work. And that concept of deep work by Cal Newport, where you dedicate time, hyper-focus, is how I like to work. But with COVID and different needs of people, I get asked all the time, like, hey, I need some help on this and blocking me. So I've had to mentally shift that my job as a leader, which is more important than ever at this time, is to really get people on track, focus, and clarity, more so than my individual contributions. So that challenge for 2020 for me was, that interruption-driven work.
Great. And certainly as you're talking about people and culture, I think that resonates with a lot of people, and whether it's the distributed work and how that changes things, and how obviously the digital transformation. So massive kudos to focusing on that early in your career. And we also have with us Vanessa Fleck, who's the delivery manager of Enterprise Business Services Americas at DLL. Welcome, Vanessa.
Hey, Dave, thanks for the invite. I also have to give a shout out to Jared, because he is the one to loop me into this awesome group. We used to work together. So my name is Vanessa Fleck. I'm a delivery manager at DLL. So we are a vendor financing and leasing company. We're also owned by a bank in the Netherlands. So we're also subject to a lot of corporate and banking and compliance regulations. My background is really in also the integration domain. And I also have a lot of experience in credit scoring and our CRM Salesforce implementation. One of the biggest, changes for me, I was already working as a global team. So very used to working remote when COVID happened, and we were already enabled. But one of the biggest challenges is that we're running Scrum teams who were generally together, and all of a sudden everybody was virtual. So one of the biggest transitions was really focusing on the people, making sure that they're still collaborating and that they're not totally inundated by all the different sprint ceremonies, and that they're connecting instead of being able to just, turn around and tap someone on the shoulder. So excited to be here today.
And certainly trying to figure out a way to engage with people, and in all those different ways that we're adapting and learning. So it's great. And of course, Jeff is the reason why I'm here with you today, because Jeff and I first met. Actually, he was on a podcast that I do, Go Beyond the Data, back in the summertime, and we've been in connection throughout and talked to each other every week, and even multiple times a week. So Jeff, you're Chief Data Officer at Bentley Systems. Give a little bit more on what you do, and what are you thinking nowadays with COVID and change?
Yeah, sure, Dave. I feel like that podcast was like 15 years ago.
I know it feels like that, doesn't it?
that was like 14 COVID months ago or something. Yeah, crazy. So I am Jeff Richardson, the Chief Data Officer at Bentley Systems. Bentley is a company based outside of Philadelphia in Exton. We make CAD software for the infrastructure space. So since most people on this are in Pennsylvania, PennDOT uses our software to build all of the roads and bridges and infrastructure in Pennsylvania. So that's kind of our fault. But outside of that, we make software that makes all of the sort of durable infrastructure in the world. So potable water, road and railway, and we're getting into a lot of other really interesting digital twin infrastructure sort of CAD spaces, like offshore plants and energy distribution, things like that. So at Bentley, my purview is the data architecture and sort of global data governance of all the information we use to run the company. We sell software to millions of people around the world, and we invoice them based on a consumption-based economy. So we've gotten very good at streaming millions and billions of points of data every day into our consumption systems. I would say in my group, I have a team of about 30 data engineers, data scientists, and database developers around the world. COVID didn't really affect our day-to-day interactions because we were pretty much distributed in Pune, in Pakistan, in the US, in Western Europe. what COVID did push for us a lot was the requirement for faster information and more accurate information to make better decisions. So, there's that little meme that goes around, everyone sees, where it's like, what spurred digital transformation in your company? Was it your CIO? Was it, competitors, or was it COVID-19? For us, we were very digital before that, but this really pushed us to get to the next level of that digital transformation, where we really, everything was cloud, everything's real time, everything is analytics and data driven. So that's been a big challenge in the last couple months.
That's massive, and hey, that helps. A little push from something like COVID might be a good thing.
Yeah, and I just want to poke Jerry. I also haven't gotten a haircut during COVID, and I don't know what to do with this anymore. Like, I need advice.
See, I've now got used to cutting my own hair, and I don't know if I'll go back, to be honest. I don't know if it's good or not, but it's not that much different than what it was before. So I feel like that's my new hobby, is cutting my own hair this year. So
I'm like 2 weeks away from a man bun. So
I've been man bun for a while, and my wife keeps doing it to me.
Okay.
Well, and we also have Priya Serai with us today. She's the CIO of Omnicable. And of course, when I was thinking of certainly dealing with the supply chain and all those different changes, we're going to get into that more later. But welcome, Priya.
Thank you, Dave. Hi, Priya here. I'm a techno business leader with Recyclable Dreams. Recyclable, yes. For the last 17 some years of my work life, my dreams, goals, aspirations have evolved as the business needs and tech around us has evolved. I have expertise in delivering strategic projects, leading cross-functional and global teams, delivering more tech products oriented towards growing revenue. I'm currently with Omnicable, as Dave mentioned, as their CIO. Omni is an electrical distributor based out of Westchester, Pennsylvania. And we're a firm gearing for growing our technology footprint, especially data and analytics seems like a common theme around the panel here, as we continue to expand our business through North America. We have 13 distribution centers here in the United States, and recently opened one in Canada right before COVID hit. So really looking forward to all our panel conversations. And Jeff and Jared, I have really developed a lot of expertise in giving haircuts to my husband and my son. So I can connect with your wives and share some of my experiences there as well.
That's great. And hey, we're learning new skills this year. So thanks, Priya. Great to have you here today. And so we're talking about globalization, and obviously COVID is top of mind for a lot of people. But what is the thing that keeps you up at night right now? What's that thing that's really keeping you up right now? And one thing I'm going to first also check in with everyone that's on. If you do have questions, just a reminder, put it in the Q&A. We're going to feed those in. So use the Q&A functionality to do that. But for the panelists, what keeps you up at night? How about start with you, Priya?
Dave, I sleep like a baby, meaning wake up every 2 hours crying. Most uncertain or unpredictable thing right now in my mind is cybersecurity. With rising threats in every industry, every business, and especially with the rising zero-day vulnerabilities, as we call it, it's quite challenging to keep up. Building a cyber resilient plan that not only includes tool sets for monitoring, audits, and all of that, creating a more resilient response action plan has been my focus this year and going into next year as well. And what I mean by response action plan is what systems and services need to go offline if a threat were to occur, what internal communication needs to go out, how to avoid that ransomware situation, what external communication and how fast do we need to send the external communication out to your suppliers, to your customers. All of that, I think, in combination needs to be included in that action plan. Because these days, no technology seems to be enough, especially with FireEye in the news now. No technology seems to be enough to build that robust cybersecurity. And how do you respond and how do you take care of an event like this if a threat were to occur is really, that's honestly keeping me up right now. And that's what we're working on.
And certainly as part of that, of course, is it's hard to, it's not like it's easy to show what's the ROI on, these investments, right? When you're talking about cyber, is there anything that you've done well to get people on board with those investments? Because that can be sometimes a painful thing related to cyber.
Yeah, we actually are going into some strategy conversations Thursday and Friday, wrapping up 2020 and gearing up for the 2021 plan. And I had a board meeting in October where I presented our cybersecurity plan, where it stands now and where we need to be. And yes, you're absolutely right. There is no revenue or cost efficiencies that obviously you can put forward with cybersecurity. So the term that I've used, and it has kind of really caught on, is we call it an insurance policy. Like you will not think twice about creating an insurance policy for your business, for business continuity, disaster recovery, so on and so forth. And I've kind of weaved in cybersecurity as part of our BCDR plan, specifically the response action that I was talking about, because it is nothing less than a disaster these days, any cybersecurity threat. And how do you maintain business, and how do you quickly go back up in the event something has to occur is something that we talk about. That how much of a downtime can we accommodate without our systems and services, and how we can run business without our systems and services, for how long we can sustain that is something that we're talking about. And then based on that, we're kind of weaving the plan on how much investment is warranted for that.
Great approach with the insurance, because it's very relatable, right? So we're always trying to. So cool, excellent. Thanks for sharing. How about you, Jared? What's keeping you up at night, other than maybe your hair?
For me, it's people. Just making sure that everybody I work with has, clarity, information, direction, and they feel like they're included and looped in all the conversations. So to mitigate that, we bumped up a lot of our all hands. We have a monthly all hands. We have alignment and meetings at peering levels pretty much consistently to make sure we're all hearing the same things, saying the same things, sharing new information that we have, and making it clear that nobody has the right answers. All we can do right now is, with the best information we have, make the best decisions we can, and just trusting our teams to fall back on our culture and our people, our values, and just doing the best thing we can with what we have and being flexible, right? That's what agility is all about. And just kind of coming back to the table when you feel stressed, overwhelmed, or unclear, talk to somebody. Like, it's fine. We're all in this boat together. Don't think you're on the outside and you're the only one that doesn't know what's going on. None of us do. So that's why we need to come together and make sure we're all talking the same language. So for me, it's about making sure my people have a safe space to really communicate. When people talk about it's important to over communicate, it's not, because a lot of times that causes more confusion, where something will get misstated on accident and then you have this echo chamber, and then it just causes all this delay. So really focusing on valuable communication, not just more communication.
That's a great point. With sometimes that over communication is used very wrong. And is there one thing that you've done this year that surprised you most from a positive impact on that communication front that you've seen?
Not so much that we've done directly. It's just a culmination to it, rather than just focusing the strategy people are going to talk about strategy and the technical people will talk about technical things. It's let's all get a clear view of the field, right? So now we have, lower end, we'll call it developers talking about top end strategy and how that ties into our business strategy, so we can make better informed decisions of where we need to go. So it's really just that cross pollination of roles and responsibilities that we're all sharing that information.
Excellent. That makes a lot of sense. And so how about you, Vanessa? What's keeping you up at night, and how are you dealing with it?
Yeah, well, I think it's a bit of a combination. I probably need to talk to Jeff to pick his brain after this. But for me, it's we're really focused on our data, and we have data and systems everywhere. And I truly believe that data can be one of our biggest assets. It's the underlying foundation to everything. And, there's a certain level of making sure that it's accurate and it's clean. And then to what Priya was saying, making sure that it's secure And with COVID, pushing us to be more digital, put things out there faster, there's a certain level of making sure that that data is clean and it's the latest and the greatest up-to-date information. That for me is we have a lot of systems and a lot of things to keep in sync. So for me, that's what keeps me up at night right now.
And has there been any progress in the sense of trying to help people around data that you felt this year that you've been able to make? Any tips of something you've been able to do that's worked well?
Well, we're definitely still on our journey, but a few of the things, and this is also tied to what Jarrett was saying, is really trying to pull together the business side of things, the technical side of things, our security officers, right, to really have that design thinking and security first, clean data first mindset as we go into different implementations and in all the different things that we're doing. Because if you think of it ahead of time and you can prepare for it, you're going to be in a much better position than if you're trying to firefight and fix it later.
That proactive versus reactive is so important. So it's a challenge to be able to do that, but it's definitely worth it. Great point. And of course, Jeff, save you for last. I'm sure you've got a whole wealth of things that you've learned now this year and accelerating forward, as I know you and I have chatted a lot. What do you say? What's keeping you up at night still, and how are you taking care of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, everything that Priya, Jared, and Vanessa said was sobering and horrifying, so that was all exciting. So anything I hadn't thought of, thank you for that, guys. That'll be great to think about. So 2020, I mean, obviously a lot of new challenges in a lot of different roles. My company went public this year. So unrelated to COVID, my current, let's say, heartburn is around all the regulations and data issues that come with a company that's 35 years old that had a certain culture around data that now has to follow a set of rules that in the past we kind of laughed at and looked at from a distance. Now we have to really conform to those very, very quickly. So we spent most of 2020 in a journey to get SOX compliant, Sarbanes-Oxley compliant, but also make sure that we were SOC 2 compliant. A lot of all kinds of financial regulations around internal data sharing. And then we compound that with a lot of European laws that are newer this year, the Singapore residency laws from 2019, GDPR is ever changing. So that was most of my, heartburn for the year. But now, more recently, obviously with the push towards faster, better data, Vanessa, to what you were saying, like we need to be spot on accurate all the time now, because if we're making decisions on data that's like even 97% accurate, people are really digging and double clicking into that 3% of what happened here. So that's always a challenge that's, top of my mind now. And a couple of days ago, really excited about the SolarWinds hack, because we're a big SolarWinds company. It's great. I don't think we're going to be on the top of the hacker list where the DOD and the Department of Energy were up there in that same list. But, now we've got to go and react to that. I had assumed, we have a very robust information security team, lots of policy there. We're very good at that. And this is just like completely out of left field. So everything's great. 2020. Yay.
And the year with a little excitement, right? So,
yeah.
Well, and so talking about COVID on, certainly it's been a terrible on both a health and economic basis, but it also has pushed organizations forward and got people to think differently and helped move cultures and change certain the entrenched attitudes. Do you have any story that you can share in how you have done this? And maybe start with you, Vanessa. I think you might have had a story in how you've been able to shift or things forward with COVID.
Yeah, so I mean, even before COVID happened, we've kind of been on our digital journey to revamp things. How do we make things simpler for our dealers? How do we make it really a no-touch digital process, the Amazon of leasing? And the one thing with COVID is that it's, if anything, it's just, as you mentioned earlier, it's pushing us to go faster and to think bigger and to try to take some of those underlying processes for our partners and for our end customers and really change the way that we do the business process for them, but also make sure that we're checking the box on all of the regulation and the compliance items that we need to do. We're really looking at, how do we get rid of why paper needs to be pushed around still, and why do we have to have a super long lease document and those types of things. So some of the steps that we're doing is really actually working with our partners and with our customers to live in that day of the life with them and really figure out what are the most tedious processes that we need to change for them. And from their perspective, how would it be a good experience for them? And I think, you have to tie it to smaller chunks. You can't focus on an end-to-end process all at one time. So we try to be agile and break it down into kind of bite-sized chunks of where we can do little improvements and tweaks, but from a user perspective, it makes a big deal to them. So I always tell the team that we need to think big, but start small and fail fast. So yeah,
I like that, with especially integrating in the user experience or customer experience and thinking about that more, because I think a lot of it can be a win on multiple sides. So that's a great feel. I was just talking with a friend yesterday. He's at one of the universities and they implemented a new learning management system, and he is just going irate over some of these things. And it's one of the bigger platforms. I'm not going to call them out, but there's some really wonky things. He's like, why do I have to click on the screen, wait 5 seconds? So what his workaround is, he has 2 computers. So he takes one of each course that he's teaching and does one, waits, that one's going to this other screen while he's just pressing buttons, and he then goes to this computer. And I'm just like, users will adapt and they will change things around. So, as in the technology space, you can really enhance a lot by doing a little user experience, and it doesn't have to be massive changes to make people really on your side. So
yeah,
great contribution, Vanessa. And how about Jeff? You might have had a story you can share and how you have done this, moving things forward.
Yeah, so Bentley's always been a cloud first, cloud forward company. We've been big users of Azure and all public cloud services for years. But we had this mentality that there were always certain things that we could never move to the cloud. So I think 2020 really pushed this forward. It was, we're not going to put network infrastructure staff in offices anymore. We're not going to have people, it's difficult to staff things 24/7 to monitor those real-time systems that you need. So we started a push in March to move, our ERP system, our on-premise CRM system, all those legacy, giant, big, old things that had to be on hardware, that had to be on rails and server rooms, to move that into public clouds. And it was difficult. We 5 years ago thought it was a 15-year project, and somehow, we got it done in let's say the 15th. We got it done 3 days ago. So it's fantastic. So all of our core infrastructure now for like everything that we do is in some public cloud somewhere. It's highly redundant, highly available, and we don't need staff in offices anymore managing it. We can have staff all over the world being remote managing it now, which makes us a more resilient company. It makes the employees happier because they don't have to go into an office and risk getting sick, and it makes the usability of those things better because now they're extensible across a huge cloud infrastructure. Well,
that's impressive. 15 years to less than 15 months. That's
yeah, it was like 6.
Yeah.
The last system was like our giant on-premise, like Teradata, SQL Server, SAP systems, like our CRM and our data warehouse, and fantastic.
Yes. It's amazing how these little things, when they start going, it's like, wait a sec, this isn't so painful. So that's a great story. Now, part of this is you're talking about distributed workforce and things are changing, is the concepts of whether it's offshoring or outsourcing, or, how do you look at the workforce differently, or distributed workforce. Certainly our mindset has changed, and there's a lot of discussions, and it seems like a very popular topic on the news. What are your thoughts? And maybe Jared, start with you on thoughts of like what's going to happen going forward with, balancing these things and I hate to use the term, but the new normal is what a lot of people are talking about. And since the vaccines are at least on the way, maybe that new normal is not too far away.
Yeah. So starting with the distributed workforce, it is absolutely the future, and it's the present in reality for some companies now. So it pushed that concept further, faster. For Boomi, there was almost zero interruption for us. We had all the tools, all the technologies. Essentially, we were driving our laptops in the office, working on them, and then driving them home. So switching to a remote distributed workforce was simple. And in fact, we've actually had people that were based in our Chesterbrick office move to other parts of the country, and nobody knew. That's how easy it was for us to just kind of, yeah, we're distributed now. So it really showed that's a very valid model. We were very big on co-location and having all the teams together, product owners, just that cohesiveness. Taking that online for us, we hit a bump for like a month of how do we do this? And then we realized it's actually not that big of a shift for us. We just need to get better about scheduling things and make it more clear when we need to meet. So this distributed workforce, it's going to change our industry for the better, in my opinion. We're going to find more talent, more flexibility, which allows people, that room that they need to bring their best selves to work all day. I think it's a great thing for the industry and for the people.
Meant also as part of that when you're recruiting new talent that you're doing things differently in the places you're looking at?
Yeah, all of our new recs by default are remote first. They're all open to remote, and then we could say, if you're near one of our other offices, we're headquartered in Chesterbrick, so we list remote, HQ, or like San Francisco, but we're going remote first.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. How about you, Priya? When we're talking about, and certainly with supply chain, oops, I lost your video, Priya, is outsourcing, offshoring, and distributed workforce. Any thoughts on any one of those or multiple of those? And I think you and Jeff maybe have a little different perspective, especially when it comes to offshoring and outsourcing a little bit.
Yeah, I hope you guys can hear me okay. I'm seeing my internet connection is unstable. Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. I feel like talent, when we talk about outsourcing, offshoring, we're thinking talent, obviously, and talent shortage in IT is nothing new. It has been discussed for over a decade now. It's more persistent, I feel, than other fields because of the constantly changing landscape with technology. There are just so many fields within IT. IT is such a broad term. You can almost call it like a flavor of the month. We talked about cybersecurity, cloud, data, artificial intelligence, mobile, IoT, and I feel like the list is endless here. And oh, by the way, you don't just need talent who understands the technology, but you also need someone who understands business to implement the right tech solutions for the right business challenges. Like, no wonder we have shortage of talent, because it's like we're looking for unicorns all the time. With this ever-changing landscape, building partnerships in the industry, I feel, is the key. Why reinvent the wheel? Why not partner and outsource certain aspects of your plan if they can deliver business value faster? And of course, you have to be strategic about it. You can't outsource everything. You have to have an insure and outsource strategy. What do you want to keep in-house? What is okay to be outsourced? But I feel certain tactical or non-IP tech needs, I certainly am always open to constantly evaluating the buy versus build, or what to partner with someone versus what is something that I want to hone inside my company.
Yeah, it certainly makes a lot of sense. Jeff, any thoughts from your end, and are you any differences?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to fight with Priya on the internet. Like, that's not mature. No, actually, I mean, I do agree with your take on that. The buy versus build mentality is an interesting kind of way of looking at it to shift to people. I have been pushing a global workforce, global mobility for about 12 years at Bentley. And I got rashers and rashers of grief from people about this, trying to hire people that were in, far away funny spots like Louisville, or, my super smart friend in Minnesota, right, or Vermont. And the expectation was always, get them to move to a cornfield 40 miles outside of Philadelphia. And it's just like, that's difficult for a person who likes technology. Like, maybe they want to live in a blueberry farm in Vermont, right? Like, I don't know. So I've been pushing this for years to get, the teams that I want to build, certainly for the build mentality of the buy versus build there, to get them sort of globally everywhere. Like, the best team of data engineers that I've seen practically build anything at all is a team that I have right now, who are in Islamabad in Pakistan. And that's not outsourcing or even offshoring. We happen to have bought a software company there, and we just picked up people. And there's a huge pool of talent, because there's I think Islamabad has one of the highest centers of technical colleges in the world, like around that area. So you get this great pool of talent that just want to do interesting things. So we've had tremendous luck with that. Like, the technical directors that I've picked up like all over the country that are like the most efficient people that I know. It's worked out fantastic. Certainly, Priya, we've outsourced certain things and those tactical things that you can kind of put in a box and then ask someone to go do that where it doesn't make sense to get that talent permanently. We've had good luck with that, but I think the acceptance now that you can hire somebody and you can have that the first thing on the LinkedIn jobs page be remote, and then wherever your thing is creating a wealth of talent everywhere, and people are finding just great fits for jobs. Part of the talent shortage from years ago, I think, was that people just didn't want to move. We tried to find an SAP BW developer about 6 years ago. We spent a year trying to find this person and then trying to convince them to move here. And I just wonder how much shorter that time would have been if it was, yeah, sure, you live in Ohio right now, stay in Ohio, it's fine. We have this thing called the internet. It's going to work out great.
Well, how about you, Jared? It looks like you might have some thoughts on this too.
Well, I was going to weigh in. I made a statement that I'll never move for a job. Like, that's like, work for me is not my purpose for living. It's about my friends, family, my connection to the area. So I'm not moving. It's just as simple as that, which is why I'm really happy this global distributed workforce, this remote first mentality is really catching on, because it opens up the world for me. Just being selfish for a second, but it really is amazing the talent we can find around the world. I was doing some research for this like niche problem that we had, and I found somebody came up with a solution in a small town in Ireland. And the fact that they have a platform, of global wide platform, to get their ideas out there, and then I connect with this person directly and talk about that. It's absolutely amazing. Some of the work that I'm seeing coming out of Israel, I run our artificial intelligence machine learning organization as well. And just seeing the work that's coming out of small teams in Israel, like 4 or 5 people, they pretty much can build an entire company, an entire product suite with no involvement from a major organization, no sponsorship. We're in the golden age of technology right now. Things are cheap or free, and just anybody with a good idea can just put together a solution, get it out there, and just drive our entire industry forward. So this concept of globalization and distributed workforces, I think, is a major advancement in our industry.
Definitely brings up a lot of opportunities, but so I have to ask each of you that, around this is, though, how do you still keep that culture that you wanted as an organization, or even as you evolve that culture? What things are you doing in a distributed workforce to move that forward? So, and certainly this year, probably that maybe has adjusted things, but for someone like Jeff, you've been doing this for a while. Your people have been distributed all over. What have you done?
Yeah, so I mean, to Jared's point, communication is key, right? Over communication is dangerous. There's a balance there you've got to find to like keep people engaged. I'm actually bad at this. Like, I know I'm bad at this, like the organized communication. But we've tried to get a culture where we have recurring, virtual. Everyone's got to have their camera on. Staff meetings, casual discussions. Kind of like we've tried to make more work happy hours. Off hours to just chit chat about things, like not too late where it's like 7 o'clock at night and messing with your family time again, but like, hey, it's 4:15, we're pretty much done for the day. Like, let's spend 25 minutes talking about the Mandalorian. And then what I've done this year is really tried to engage more in sort of fun events, right? You get all these like invitations now for like, the APIs and IPAs, like Elation sent out the other day. So our team for Christmas this year, we always have like a fun Christmas party to keep the team engaged. Instead, you guys all appreciate this because you're in Southeast Pennsylvania, except for you, Dave. I mailed everybody a box of like high-end DeBruno Brothers cheeses and crackers and spreads and things. And then we had somebody from DeBruno Brothers get on like a 35-minute Zoom call and talk to us about like cheese. And we did that at like 11 o'clock in the morning as like just a team building Christmas party thing for the team. So like it was kind of fun. You got to be creative and like figure out ways to engage people. But I think once you spend a little bit of time doing that, you think of 100 different ways you can engage people just online. It's how I engage most of my friends now. I mean, it's how you and I talk all the time, Dave. So, you just have to extend that now to the larger family that is your work team as well.
That's a great point. How about you, Priya? What have you done that's been successful?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my video keeps going in and out here. I 100% agree with Jeff and Jared. COVID, I know we've all been really, really disturbed by the events that happened around us, but it did bring some positives, right? Like the virtual and how you are more connected with web conferences and videos and stuff, and how you can be flexible around the work hours. That has expanded the horizons on how you can keep your teams engaged and open up kind of a little bit of your personal lives with different backgrounds that we see, with kids walking around and all of that. And that, I think, helps personalize the relationship a little bit more, especially when you talk about different cultures and teams around the world. One thing that we do a lot in our virtual happy hours is talk about web series, because I am a huge Netflix buff, a huge web series buff, and very quickly you learn on how many people around you feel the same way, and just sharing thoughts on what you're watching today, what's coming up next, and all of that has been a lot of fun.
I've yet to ask, like, what's your favorite Netflix show? And like, no one has an answer. It seems like Netflix almost has everybody's customers. So, or any of those platforms. How about you, Jared? What have you done recently or this year that's been very successful in trying to promote that virtual culture?
It's hyperconnectivity. We've had a couple virtual like happy hour type things. One of the things that I do is I host a around the house scavenger hunt for my teams. So for me, it's a way to get my different teams together and talking, right? We're very focused on our teams and that inclusive, make sure we're all good, but we're not great at going across those teams. We're good at talking, but not actually connecting. So those are opportunities where we can actually connect, where I'll pretty much be the bad guy. You know, everybody wants to become a bad guy. So the scavenger hunt was a great way to do that for me, of like, you know, go find this. And it's been really fun. And I try to encourage people to, you know, include their families. Like, you can use them as runners if you want. So it's just a way to kind of bring that, you know, human aspect that, like, oh, you know, we're all here together. We have our own struggles. We have our own opportunities, and just kind of seeing that and talking through that, but not in a like, here's a topic, you know, dealing, you know, home life balance, go, but just organically that kind of comes up. So it's just really keeping it organic and true to human nature.
I will say, just jumping on that, Jared, I have noticed that like my team communication has been fantastic, but that cross-team communication, especially like not even just my teams, but like outside of my department communication, really suffered a lot. Like in an office, right, you'd have like one of our like, you know, dashboard developers sitting next to somebody in financial operations, and they would just, you know, they had a schedule where they would go to the water cooler at the same time or whatever. Yeah. And like, that's just completely died. And I don't have a good answer for that. Like, I can't force communication between like 3,000 other employees and departments. So that has been a struggle. And I just, you know, I only bring it up because like, that's something that if this continues for another 6-12 months, you know, that's going to have to get some kind of fix there.
Right. That concept of serendipity doesn't exist. And it's always, you know, let me reach out to this person real quick, and then thinking like, oh, they have their notification, they're in a meeting, so I'll just wait. And then you kind of move on to the next thing. So that's connection at the water cooler, or, hey, I saw you, you know, you weren't busy, I wanted to chat to you about XYZ. And it's that connection in the office where you could talk about anything. It doesn't even have to be important, versus when you're virtual, you're like, I better have an important reason to, you know, try to connect to this person.
Right. You get none of that casual conversation that you know, weird office friendship that you get with somebody. Like, oh, is that like a fun pop doll on your desk? Like, oh, you like the walk, whatever. And you start that, and like, you don't build up that trust with that person.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's that, you know, I know everybody that sits around me because they sit around me. So I talk to them all the time. And the only reason I talk to them is because they sit near me. Well, nobody sits near me now. So like, trying to keep those relationships together, it's tough. Yeah.
Just to jump on that, one of the things we've done is we've created a few channels that are like for broader teams, and you know, teams can post like celebrations or, you know, things that have happened, and it has a more kind of low key feel to it. So sometimes it'll be, you know, just a funny post or something that people know they're interested in. But some of the channels we've been finding, if you create them for broader teams, has some more, you know, networking that happen within them.
Yeah, our Slack random channel is our most popular
channel. Yeah.
No, that's a good one. I know one thing that I've also seen some companies do too, and we've been working with some companies doing this is doing even shared training with other, like who's the business units that your people work with, and so just doing that together where it's like, hey, we're with that business team, we're going to go through a training thing together, and it's very intentional as part of it. It's more of a team building thing, even though there's training behind it. So trying to do more of these. What are these other ways that you can get your people interacting with the people that they're going to be, working with more, and hopefully some more of those conversations just happen out of it. Yeah. And one, I don't know if anyone's heard of 37 Signals and the folks out of Chicago. I always think of like some of the things that they do, and they have a podcast called Rework that I always recommend to people. And of course they have a book, I think with the same name, just on how they've been able to be a pretty successful distributed company. Now they're not also a massive, like I don't know if their culture scales that well. I mean, they've kept it fairly 50 to 60, 70 people, but they've done a pretty good job of that. So I always encourage people to try out some of the things that they've done. So we're running a little short on time. So I want to make sure to get Priya's take, being that supply chains certainly have been a topic of conversation, a lot of speculation on what's going to be happening around supply chains. As a technology leader, that you're with an organization that's very supply chain dependent, how have you adapted or made changes or, more proactively preparing versus with COVID and around supply chains?
Yeah, no, it's this panel has been refreshing, Dave, because all of us have that global mentality, and we talked about teams, distributed workforce, and so on and so forth. It's been a little different type of conversation when you talk about supply chains for physical products, and even technology or technical teams, especially early on when the pandemic hit and everybody was struggling in making sure that your remote teams, your offshore teams, offshore meaning outside of US, are still geared up and are supporting you the way you wanted them to. So there was this phase in March and April where people had varied thoughts. A lot of people believe that that has made the case for reducing our dependency on global supply chains. But now I think there's been a pendulum shift again where we're instead thinking that it has kind of highlighted the dangers of moving away from globalization. As an example, we all heard about, like when you talk about healthcare, we all heard about severe shortage of vital items like from masks to toilet paper. But thanks to like these global producers of these items, demands were met fairly quickly. Providing vaccines now has also become a global endeavor, right? And not just healthcare, in the tech industry, for both hardware and software, from big Silicon Valley firms to your mid-sized consultancies, all have adapted this global resourcing approach. So 2020, in my mind, doesn't change our supply chain strategy much, at least in that regard, on where you're sourcing your products from. What has changed, though, is the protocols we followed to keep our distribution centers open, and how we maintain the same service levels while ensuring that our distribution center staff stayed safe. What has also changed is how we update our inventory levels to kind of, with the changing demand that we have month over month. There's a lockdown, and now that we're open, and now we're back to hybrid with schools changing. Obviously, that market demand has been constantly going up and down. So how do you stay competitive in that environment, but also manage your inventory and your cost levels kind of stagnant based on that, has been quite challenging. And that's where we are in the midst of right now, planning and implementing a ton of data algorithms that better predict our demand forecast, and in turn enables a stronger inventory and supply chain for us, even in 2021, and the unpredictability associated with 2021. Where we are using machine learning, and I'm currently like in full warp speed ahead and in kind of implementing those tools so that we're targeting less scraps and less losses, especially from our wire and cable products, and stock the right items at the right place with the changing market dynamics, especially for certain verticals that are kind of slowing demand still with 2021.
Yeah, it's certainly a popular thing, and trying to leverage more of that prediction, and obviously being able to adjust quickly and understand when those algorithms are need to adjust, and when you can't trust as much. Jared, how about, did you have something that you wanted to add there? I saw you go off mute before. Maybe I missed you.
No, I was actually an interesting conversation for Priya, hearing about, physical supply chains where I've spent my entire career in software. So it's the challenging of supply chains is, I think it's been greatly highlighted with this pandemic, and this understanding the flow of goods can have this massive ripple effect.
And it will be interesting. I have a couple of friends that's their focus is on supply chain analytics, and it's interesting to hear with the different conversations that they're focused on. Definitely a lot of things happening in that space. So, what about one of the topics that's really talked about a lot, and obviously there's different political changes around this maybe coming up, is around regulation, data privacy. Obviously, Facebook just was sued by the government, and Google was, and some of these companies, and there's also been a lot of news around recent hacking and things that are around that. But around this topic of internet regulation, data regulation, and also privacy, what has changed this year, and where do you see things going from your perspective? And maybe Jeff, maybe you want to start around that and around data privacy and the internet. And
so I mean, obviously, Bentley's a global company. We have personal information on lots of people around the world. So data privacy, data regulation is a big thing. Where I'm focused right now is on the regulation and privacy inside the AI space. So we're starting to put AI into a lot of our products. We're starting to build that into a lot of the services that we have, and we're starting to leverage a lot of the personal data that we have carefully governed and regulated over the last 10 years or so, to put it into those AI models, those machine learning models. And somebody mentioned this earlier. I think it might have been Jared or Priya, I don't know, or Vanessa. Try to get ahead of those things instead of be reactive, be proactive. I am positive there's going to be a wealth of regulation, certainly coming out of Western Europe, around ethical AI, responsible governed AI, like actual set, very, very detailed rules around how that works. And if you're a company that's building platforms, that's building AI models, right, that has PII based in them, and then all of a sudden Germany says you have to take these 17 people out of your training model, right? Like, how do you actually scale and do that in a way that you can, one, prove to them so you don't get sued for millions and billions of dollars, but then two, rebuild those models commercially so that you can actually do that and then have a product that you can sell the next day. Because they're not going to say, oh, you have 6 months or a year to go try to undo that and unwind that particular ball of yarn. Like, you need a plan now so that you're agile to go do that in 6 months and 12 months. This is a hill that I'm personally trying, I'm going to go die on this hill because I'm getting a lot of pushback from our software groups, from developers, from just the teams in general. They're like, well, there's no regulation right now. And I'm like, yeah, but this is actually going to be like an order of magnitude more complicated than GDPR when we go to actually like implement this and not get in trouble. This isn't fencing off some databases and following a couple rules. This is like the things that we're selling. You're going to fundamentally have to change how those work, right? So how fast can you go do that? So anyways, that's my soapbox on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's fundamentally changing, how you sort of do the architectural, just like your business model from the beginning. Because if you don't start good, it can be really, really painful later. And I do see a lot of.
If you're not cataloging that data when you capture it, if you're not fencing it off and putting it somewhere where it's manageable, if you don't have an auditable system to then govern that, remove that, whatever, and then if you haven't trained your developers to learn how to redo those models on those data sets and build a process around that, you're doomed.
Mm-hmm. How about Priya? Anything to add there? Because I know you're thinking a lot on this right now.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with Jeff. It is an uphill battle, and Jeff, I'm very sure you won't die on that uphill climb. You'll
be surprised.
You'll fly. I agree. And GDPR, we talk about GDPR always, and it was definitely not the first data regulation that was put in place. But certainly was the first one that has shaken a lot of our tech leaders around the world. And even in US now, we're seeing the California Consumer Protection Act that was implemented sometime in 2020. It was followed by Texas. I think that's already in place in October, I believe. and even Nevada, even before California was put in place. So like, then now you're seeing all these different state regulations and hopefully followed by a federal regulation in place. So yes, they're certainly evolving, and high time, like with this thing we call internet, it's high time that we have these privacy laws in place. I feel like subscribing to blogs to kind of stay up to date in changing the world, ensuring your legal counsel stays abreast so that someone is helping you with the changing and how does that impact your technology. Implementing audits and around different regulations, Jeff mentioned that. Those are certainly some of the quick tactical ways that we definitely need to put in place. But at the heart of it, I feel it's important to still distinguish if you want to just do enough to abide by these laws, or do you firmly believe in what the laws are trying to prevent from a privacy standpoint, and embrace the change even before it comes, similar to what Jeff was saying, in kind of thinking ahead of it, even before the regulation is put in place. And I certainly believe in the latter, and ensure that data privacy is front and center for both employees and customers in any application that I implement. Data regulations may seem to have some short-term negative consequences, and it may seem to slow down the growth. Either you talk to your software developers or you're talking to your leadership outside of IT. They seem to think that this is slowing down growth and unnecessary investments and so on and so forth. But I feel like the long-term benefits of having a loyal customer base that places trust in the company far outweighs the concerns, and that's what I think the focus needs to be in those conversations.
Yeah, I think some clearly Apple and some other companies have focused on, like, and people will buy a product because of their view that privacy is valued more in that and how things are treated. So I know we're at time. People are there's gonna be networkings, but I want to give another minute for each of you to have any parting words, any words of advice for folks as they're planning for, well, planning's probably already been occurring for a long time ago for 2021 and 2022, but any parting words? Let's start with you, Jared, on parting words of advice.
Yeah, my advice is pretty much kind of what I've been saying the whole time. It's focus on people, right? Because people are really what takes care of the business and drives the business forward. And if we're all aligned on the mission and we can make the best decisions, we're going to survive the pandemic. But if our people are not aligned, they're anxiety driven, they're just looking for anything they can, it's going to cause a lot of disruption. So my advice is, try to build that strong people culture, make sure your values are understood and people live them, not just, they're on the wall. And everybody has the example from, I think it was Enron with their core principles, yet they basically went against every single one of them, right? So stay true to the mission, stay true to the principles, and stay true to each other. That's my parting advice. Great
words of advice. Focus on people. How about you, Vanessa?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Jared and the people, but I'm going to go back to my data that I'm sure Jeff will be mad at me for stealing. But I do believe that data is our biggest asset. And I like to think that having clean data is as important as having clean drinking water. So I hopefully with the teams and focus on data, we can make things better for our real-time innovation and technology-driven processes.
People got data. How about you, Jeff? Your turn.
I'm going to agree with Jared. I mean, data is important and everything, but especially this year, people probably aren't doing great. So if any bit of wisdom I can impart on you is just make sure your teams are, everyone's feeling good and feeling connected, right? You can fix, other stuff, but people are stressed. And on top of that, it's harder to network now. It's harder to, get opinions and things. These events are great. So thank you to the Pact, right, for putting these together. But if you guys, if there's other discussions that we can have about this stuff, please feel free to reach out. And I'm assuming everyone's going to nod their head and be like, yep, find me on LinkedIn, find me wherever. I love talking about this stuff. Let's network. Let's figure out, how to be productive and happy and, move forward and get out of 2020 as soon as possible.
Priya, what parting words of advice do you have for people?
So sticking with the people theme, we did not talk about diversity, and I do feel very strongly about bringing diversity in when we talk about people, and big believer of supporting and promoting women in technology. I know there's a lot of conversations going on, but I still think it's not enough, especially with the pandemic and with the remote issues all of us are facing. I feel women tend to get the brunt of it in trying to still balance your work and your family life, and especially when the line is so thin now and so gray. So all you leaders out there, as you're supporting your people, watch out for women in your group. If you see signs of stress, if you see there is less flexibility still, offer them the flexibility, offer them the support, offer them the boost that they need so that they don't drop from their career lives, they continue plowing through. It needs a tad more planning, tad more boost, and we'll all see the fruits of it.
Yeah, and I echoing on that certainly is being proactive, because not everyone is so good about showing you those signs. And so, check in with people and really, be extra sensitive and listen, and I think Dean's going to come and close things out, and then we're going to go into small groups.
You actually get Danielle.
Okay.
So thank you everyone for participating. Thanks, Dave, Jared, Jeff, Priya, and Vanessa. Really appreciate you being here and sharing your experience and wisdom with us. We're gonna hop back into the networking room tables right now, and we'll leave that open until about 10 a.m. So for those of you that want to stick around, have some conversations, seek out some of our panelists for some follow-up questions, you're welcome to do that. As always, we want to thank our sponsors at the Technology Executive Roundtable for supporting us and helping us gather. So Amatech, Dell Boomi, Signity, Comcast Business, RSM, SAP, Slalom, SEI, and Vanguard. Thank you all so much. This does it for PACT for 2020. It's been quite a year. We'll start up again with these TERs and with other programming starting in January. So keep in touch, but have a happy new year, everyone. And we will see you in 21. Have a good one.